What's up, motherfuckers? Magnus Booner here. Today's been a pretty easy day. I woke up and the first thing I did was I ran a marathon. And after that I went ahead and did a little CrossFit. Went in, put in a 10-hour shift at the brewery, and after that was all over with, I busted out a Centennial on the bicycle, rode 100 miles, and finished it up with some powerlifting. But now I think it's time for a beer. So this is episode 3 of the weekly 12-ounce Ramble. So let's get on with this and let's start some rambling. So the other day I was having a bullshit session with my buddy Rory, and we were talking about wine drinking. Rory used to have a girlfriend that was into wine drinking, and they drink some $80 bottles of wine, and I said to Rory, holy shit, for $80 it better taste like a blowjob. And then I thought, wait a second, that came out wrong, and started to backpedal, and then the whole thing just started to snowball, and it turned into a really big mess. Taste like a blowjob, what does that mean? Jesus. Tonight we're drinking Eyinger Bavarian Pils, and I'll tell you what, this doesn't taste like a blowjob at all. This tastes like good beer right here. So Eying is a city on the outskirts of Munich, and the beer from the city of Eying, in German, when something is from a city, you add an ER to the end of it, so Eyinger would be beer from Eying. And it's one of the best breweries in that Munich area, in my humble opinion. Inside the city limits of Munich, a lot of the beers have a lot of sulfur in them, to the point that it's almost off-putting to me. I don't get any sulfur out of any of the Eyinger beers. They're well balanced. The yeast they use accentuates malt nicely, and it's clean. And so then they can balance that with a nice hop, as in the case of this Pils. It's got a nice firm bitterness. It's actually a firmer bitterness than what I would typically expect out of a Bavarian-style Pils. I bet it's close to 29 BUs, where a lot of them are lower than that, right around 25, maybe as low as 20 in that part of Germany. It's a good beer. I've been getting some negative fan feedback. Last week I was busy. I had a lot going on, and I missed doing the weekly 12-ounce Ramble. And so I got some emails and a bit of harassment about that, and I'm sorry, but here I'm back, and I'm back rambling at you. So don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. Something interesting happened to me the other day. I was over at my buddy's house. We'll call him the eccentric prick. And he has a friend that is a beekeeper. And, you know, back when I was a kid, I used to watch the Discovery Channel a lot, mostly so I could watch wild animals fornicate and chimpanzees masturbate. But once in a while, in between that, I would see something interesting, you know? And at some point I saw a video of a beekeeper, and I thought that was pretty badass. But I never thought in my life I would ever be wearing a bee suit and be seeing all that. So I'm over at this eccentric prick's house, and he's got a friend, and she was over. She's a real deal beekeeper, and he had some hives there. They're her bees, but she keeps the hives there for, I'm sure there's some kind of reason, or maybe they're his bees at this point, and she just takes care of them. I don't know how it works, but we were having a barbecue, and before I know it, I've got on this frickin' bee suit, and I'm standing and looking over this lady's shoulder as she's pulling apart these beehives, and that shit was fascinating. The first thing I noticed is those little buggers aren't very aggressive at all. I know she did some kind of smoking of the hives before we took them apart, and you know, I probably was told why exactly we do that. I'm assuming it drives some bees away, I guess. I don't fucking know. Guess I should ask her that next time I see her. But, so we're inside there, and they're just doing their thing. They're B&Bs, and we pull out the little frames, and they're building the honeycomb on there. And she points out the drones. Now, the drones are interesting. These are male honeybees. They can't sting you, and they don't do anything. These little buggers, they don't make honey. They don't do anything other than fertilize eggs, and they're lazier than shit. In the winter, they get driven out of the hives, and I'm assuming that, just based on my knowledge of genetics, that these are drones that come from other honeybee colonies and then find their way into this one, because, you know, if they were the sons of the queen, they would act like some of the, well, some inbred folks. But I thought, man, those drones, they got it going on. That's a good life right there. But yeah, that was a badass experience. I got to learn a bunch of ins and outs, learn about honey and pollen and honeycomb and queen bees. One of the hives did not have a queen, and that's an issue. I think they introduced one and got killed, and so now they got to try to do that again. Yeah. For round 2, we've got an amber lager from Bayern Brewing. Bayern Brewing's out of Montana. Missoula, Montana, by golly. I'm a little sore from the CrossFit. I haven't done that in a day or two. I'm often doing CrossFit. This Anger beer cap is pretty special to me. It's got that onion dome building on it. That's a church. A lot of churches in rural Bavaria have that onion dome on top. That's a holdover from the old Byzantine Empire, and I really can't tell you exactly how those wound up in fucking Bavaria, but it's a thing. And then the building to the right of that is Liebhard's Gasthaus. Liebhard's Gasthaus is actually where the Anger Brewery was founded, and that's not an old brewery by German standards. I think it's like 1820. Probably says on here. Germans love to say that kind of shit. Oh, you bastards. There it is. I'm lying to you. Family owned and operated since 1878. So if you're American, you probably think that's old. In Germany, that ain't shit. The Weihenstephan Brewery in Freising is, they've been brewing there since 1040. Now, to be fair, that means there's been a brewery there from 1040. And for all you dumb fucks that think they're brewing the same beer that they were brewing back in 1040, I'm sorry, they are not. The beer they're brewing these days tastes nothing like the beer they were brewing way back then. That's a rabbit hole. We might jump down that in a bit. But right now we're talking about this cap. Matter of fact, the cap has on it the same thing that's on this label. An old Liebhard's Gasthaus there on the right. That's fucking near and dear to my heart. Back in the day, 2009 probably. I think it was 2009. It was my second Euro trip. We headed out to Eying, my travel buddy, my sweetie at the time. And we headed out there just to visit this brewery. It's a good brewery. And Liebhard's Gasthaus is actually where they started the brewing originally. And I think it was a different family name then, but it's, two sides of the family. They've been brewing beer for a long time. And they used to brew beer on a stovetop, it sounded like, in the back of the Gasthaus, and eventually it got bigger and became a real brewery. Uh, at some point, they completely modernized and built a really nice, fancy brewery. But at that Gast house, I'm in there with my sweetie. I think I'm eating a pretzel and I'm eating some soup. Hanging from the ceilings, well, I don't know what the fuck it is. It's got aluminum foil on the bottom of it and it's brown. And so I say to the beer lady, the beer tender, or I don't even know what they call those in German. I probably should. I say to her, Entschuldigen Sie bitte, was ist das? And she looks at me and says, and bless her heart for translating this, because I wouldn't know what she said if she would have said it in German, even though I just faked to speak some to her. She says, ham? So they got these frickin' hams hanging from the ceiling, curing there in the Noel Liebhardt's Gast house. There's also some peppers hanging up there, and I think even some garlic, just hanging from the rafters. I like that kind of shit. So we were staying at the Eying Hotel. So the brewery maintains a hotel, and it's across the street from the Gast house there. And I don't know how the ownership works out. The Gast house still sells all Eyinger beer, and it's the old original place. Then the hotel, that's pretty fancy. We had dinner there, and it was some pretty fancy eating. And I think I had some venison medallions, and there's some epically heavily caramelized onions on those venison medallions. They're so caramelized. If I would have caramelized them that way, my Aunt Shirley would have made fun of me because, well, rural Americans don't understand how to caramelize onions like rural Bavarians, I guess. But at some point during this meal, I get brought some bread, and then there's some kind of spread that's been piped into a little dish with a piping bag, and so it's kind of star-shaped, and it's got some bits in it, and I look at the lady, and again, was ist das? And she goes, fat. It was lard, and it was to spread on the bread. So in rural Bavaria, they'll take rendered pig fat, they may or may not mix it with some herbs, and you spread that on bread and eat it like butter. If that ain't fucking cool, I don't know what is. During that trip, we got to tour the brewery. That was a fun tour. I set it up early, and of course they start out the tour, and the first thing they do is they got you standing by this big granite rock, and it's got a fountain coming out of the top, and it's got like a collection basin, and he turns it on, he's got the water flowing, he tells you how deep it is coming out of the ground, and how pure the water is and how great it is. And that's fine. Every European brewery tour I've ever have, I think they start them all telling you how great the water is. The old Olympia brewery, they'd run the same bullshit. It's the water was their slogan. As brewers, since we've understood modern chemistry, we've all been modifying our water. We'll add acid or use acidulated malt, or we'll use an acid rest with the malt. We'll add different mineral compounds, gypsum, calcium chloride, etc. We manipulate our water. Here in the Northwest, we're lucky. The water is like a blank chalkboard in most places. There are some that don't have this, but where I have worked, it's always been this way. So at that point, you can add whatever minerals you want to it. When I was down in Olympia, we had a little bit of bicarbonate in the water, so we'd use some acidulated malt. I digress. Where was I? Eyinger Brewery tour. We got to tour that plant. Epic modern production brewery. They ran a centrifuge so they could dial in the cell counts for their wheat beers. They had 2 brewmasters on staff, and I think they said they had 40 total production employees. But on the brew side, it was so automated. They had 2 brewmasters, one lab technician to do quality control checks, to plate things out and things of that nature. The brewery would start up at 10 p.m. on Sunday night, and then depending on what they were brewing, they would brew around the clock until Thursday afternoon. At some point, it would vary the time of day on Thursday depending on what they were brewing. The brewery was so automated, and this was before smartphones. The brewery was so automated, the brewers would carry, I guess, what would be similar to a smartphone or a tablet with them throughout the day to control the brewery. Germans love technology. They love to make things unnecessarily complicated. And with their culture and being so anal, they can do that and make it work. When we try to do that in America, you punch an automated valve, then you walk over to the automated valve to make sure it actually opened. I don't know if it's the same way over there or not, but I imagine it's not, because these fellas, these Braumeisters, they did not have to be on site to even brew the beer. They could be eating Sunday dinner with their family, and this thing would just start making beer. And it was all programmed, so it's controlled. They like control. It's all controlled, so they're brewing exactly the beer they want to brew. Some people think you take the soul out of it or whatever when you remove the human being. Well, anybody that thinks that's a fucking idiot and never brewed a batch of beer in their life. All human beings do to beer is fuck it up. The human being gets creative and creates the beer, and then he has to physically produce it. And that's where human error comes in. And the more you can automate that process and remove the human error, the more consistent, high-quality beer you are going to get. The big breweries that create crappy beer, it's not because of the equipment, it's because of the lack of creativity of the leadership in that brewery. Don't ever forget that. Don't fucking ever forget that. That is important. It is when you've got equipment where you can produce the results exactly how you want every time, you make world-class beer. And if you don't understand that, well, go drink your fucking cloudy IPA. I don't give a fuck to talk to you. But I digress. So this old Eyinger brewery, they, 2 brewmasters, if there's an issue, it would come up on their electronic thing, and they could control it there, and if it was a big enough issue, they'd have to go down the brewery to deal with it. And I thought that was pretty cool, because the breweries I've always worked at have been very modern, and I fancy myself a pretty good brewer. But once in a while, we screw things up, and I wish I didn't ever screw anything up, because I don't like to screw things up. These days I've created a lot of fail-safes and checks and balances and how I do things, that things don't get messed up. But in the early days, we were brewing an understaffed brewery. Seems like all the breweries I've brewed at have been understaffed at least at some time. And that's when things got messed up, and it happens. Well, in this 12-ounce Ramble, I've drained 2 beers. I feel like we're just starting to get some good content, so we might have to keep going. Let me make sure it's recording still. Old Magnus Booner here. We've done some traveling in our day. So back in the day, I used to work at a brewery in Olympia. And in those days, I worked my asses off in the summer. This would have been about 2004, 2005. I was a young buck. I had a lot of energy. And I was one of the most driven OCD human beings you would have met. And that ain't bragging, because I drove myself fucking nuts being that way. That's just who I was. And so I would start Man, I'd work my ass off. I was getting about 4 hours of sleep a night. Coming from the bakery I worked at before that, I was used to sleep deprivation. I was a young fellow full of testosterone, a fuck ton of caffeine, and I was just getting after it. And I think it was a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon of my work week, and I'm not exaggerating. In the summertime in those days, I would work north of 60 hours. There were a couple times I worked close to 80 hours. It was a messed up company, and I guess that's what we needed to do. But this Saturday, I had gotten off work early, and I was in the pub. And when I say got off work early, it's a 6-day work week, and I probably had in 60 hours by Friday. And again, I ain't exaggerating. I used to do this shit. So I'm sitting in there in the pub, and this little blonde gal, cute little hippie chick, her name was Erin, and I'll even say her last name. It was, well, no, I won't. Her name was Erin. We try to protect people's identity here when I'm rambling. And she's telling me about the cool places she's traveled, and she finishes and she's like, "Isn't there anywhere you want to go?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to go to Bavaria. My old boss Rudy from the bakery, he was from Bavaria, Munich area, a little town called Dachau. Maybe you've heard of it. He was a sweet old German man from the bakery, and he owned the place. He was a good man, and he used to tell me about German brewing when I was working there. And now that I was a brewer, I really wanted to go see this German brewing. And I told her, I want to go to Bavaria. And I'm glad she asked me that question, because I shit you not, it changed my life. I tried to put things in place to go to Bavaria that fall. Didn't happen. So next fall, 2006, was my first time traveling abroad. My travel partner, Miss Starr, her and I, we flew into Munich, and we found our way to our favorite hotel, and I've been there a few times since, called, it's on Goethplatz. It's the Hotel Herzog on Goethplatz. And we found our way from the Luftflogen, if I'm saying that right, the airport, Luftflogen, via train to the to Marienplatz, and then from Marienplatz up to where our hotel was in Goethplatz. And I was a rural kid at that time, and I thought, you some bitches, you don't speak English, you can get the fuck out of my goddamn country. Well, I'll tell you what, while we were on that train, they were nice enough to translate some stuff into English for us. With every stop, they'd say it in German, and then they'd say it again in English. And, I might have had the balls to travel abroad, and I might have tried to learn some English, but I've been doing that for years. I might have tried to learn to sprechen Deutsch, but I wasn't doing so good at that time, so they threw me a bone. They told me how to say that in my language, and I have since learned that, that's a good thing. We're all in this world together, just trying to get along. And we don't all speak the same language, and we aren't all of the same culture, but most of us all want the same thing. We just want to be happy, and we just want to live, and we're a community, and we need to help each other. And I'm fucking rambling, but I learned all that shit from traveling. Before then, I was a fucking asshole, and I just thought it was all about me. The old Hotel Herzog, so that was a good spot. Truth be told, I can't remember much from that very first trip, other than that my sweetie and I argued a lot. I thought I knew where we were going, and she actually did. And I don't know why I thought I knew where shit was, because I have a horrible sense of direction. And then I remembered the words of an old timer named Don that I worked with, and he was talking about him and his wife, and he said, you can either be right or you can be happy. And I shut my mouth, because I was I was neither. I wasn't right, and arguing's not fun. I shut my mouth and I let that lady take charge, and things got a lot better. I told her where I wanted to go. She'd get us there, and we started getting along then. But we fought more in those 10 days. We were only gone for 10 days. We fought more in those 10 days than we had in our entire relationship. And I can say that honestly. We dated for 12 years. In those 10 days, we fought as much, if not more, than the rest of the relationship together. Traveling can be stressful. Being in the country where you don't speak the language, a couple socially awkward, nerdy kids trying to get along with the locals. But it helped me develop as a human being, and traveling is one of the best things I've done. I shit you not. And if you've never been anywhere, get off your ass and go somewhere. Don't go on some canned vacation to fucking Mexico where you're going to go to a resort and the only Mexicans you're going to interact with are the ones that are paid to serve you. Go somewhere where you're going to sit on a bar stool, or, I don't know, I'm a drinker. I come from a drinking culture. That's what we do. But go somewhere where you're going to rub elbows with the locals. Get off your ass. Go see the world. If you're not doing that, you don't qualify to have an opinion about world politics. But who the fuck am I? I'm just a drunk with a camera in front of him. But we hung around Munich for about 4 days. Then we headed up to Cologne. Now this is where it gets fun. I think I scheduled the hotel there in Munich right when we got there. And I thought I'd figure the rest out. Well, it was Oktoberfest season, and I was doing shit at the last minute, so I spent way more than I needed to. And so we head up to Cologne, and we're staying at this fancy fucking hotel because it's all we could find. I budgeted about $7,000 for that trip, and it was 10 days. After that, I took a 3-week vacation in 2009, a 3-week vacation in 2010. I think I spent about $5,000 on each of those. So do your research, kids, and you can save some money on your traveling. And, you know, these days I think my travel philosophy is changing a bit. If you want to live like a local and rent an apartment for an entire month and stay in the same area and actually interact with the locals, you can save more money. But it's hard being a tourist because there's so much to see, and you don't know when you're going to get to see it all. And you will never get to see it all in one trip. I'll tell you that shit. I've been to Munich three times, and there's still shit for me to see in Munich. I've been to Prague twice. There's still stuff for me to see in Prague. I've been to Bamberg twice. There's more to see there. Man, I love to travel. Been to Brno once. I want to go back there. Second largest city in Czech Republic. Where were we? So we head up to Cologne, and I'm such a fucking dumbass. I keep reading in this Rick Steves book about a cathedral, and so I say to Star, it's like, hey man, apparently there's a cathedral we need to check out while we're in this city. I'm going there to drink Kolsch beer. I'm a brewer. I've been reading about Kolsch. I've drank a handful of beers that called themselves Kolsch. I'm never going to know what Kolsch really tastes like unless I go to fucking Cologne and drink it. If you're a brewer, get off your ass and travel. I know on your wage that's hard. Suck some dicks at the glory hole and make it happen. So we roll into Cologne, and we get off the train, and I look up in the air, and I'm looking at this ginormous Gothic cathedral. It is the 3rd largest religious building in the world. This thing is fucking epic. And my dumbass is in this city to drink Kolsch beer. Which we did. We drank a lot of it. That was interesting. So we spent 4 days in Cologne. One of those days we hopped a train to Dusseldorf. I need to drink a beer style called alt beer. There's nothing cool in Dusseldorf. That is not necessarily true. There's lots of cool shit in Dusseldorf. It's not the most touristy city, but there's alt beer. It was bombed heavily during the war, so a lot of the historic shit got blown up. That's what I mean when I say it's not cool. But in the Altstadt, I think that literally translates to old town or old part of town, they've got these old beer halls, and they're serving these little glasses of alt beer. And so I got to taste all those and take a lot of tasting notes. And later I use those tasting notes to recreate an award-winning alt beer, which doesn't matter for shit. You can brew the best alt beer in the West Coast, and that does not matter, because all the IPA holes out here want to drink IPA. And that's fine, but we won some medals with that old alt, and eventually the company I work for discontinued it because nobody wants to drink award-winning alt on the West Coast of the United States. And I'll tell you what, that's frustrating. So we tried to drink every goddamn Kolsch and Cologne and every alt beer in Dusseldorf, and that was fun. And then we headed back to Munich for Oktoberfest. We stayed again at the... No, this time we did not stay at the same hotel. But we stayed there years later, in 2009, and the lady recognized us, and that felt special. Good breakfast at Hotel Herzog on Goethplatz. Good breakfast, good pastries, cold cuts, croissants. I like to put the Nutella on the croissant with the Kirsch jam. That's cherry jam. Fucking good eats, man. But, yeah, there's a fat kid inside of me. I hope he doesn't come back. I like where I'm looking now. So we're back in Munich. We stay again at this overpriced, fancy fucking hotel, because that's all there was. And since it was Oktoberfest season, we were paying out the ass like $300 a fucking night. And the lady there was wearing a dirndl. Now you probably wonder what a dirndl is, because if you've never traveled, you don't know. The dirndl is the St. Pauli girl dress. You see the old St. Pauli girl, and she's got her boobs pushed up, and she's wearing that sexy traditional dress. Well, that's the dirndl. Now, this lady, she didn't have much for boobs to push up, so it wasn't that kind, but she was beautiful nonetheless. And, sorry, I just had a picture of a friend of mine wearing a dirndl anyway. So we, this happens to me sometimes. So we stayed at this spot, and we went over to the Oktoberfest. Now, if you've never been to the Oktoberfest, that's a big fucking party. And when I say it's a big party, it's the biggest party I've ever been at. And first off, I'm a shy, docile human being. I don't just put myself out there to the world, certainly not on YouTube. It was weird for me being at this party. I'm an introvert. I'm an extroverted introvert, I guess, but there's all these fellas in the lederhosen. There's people in dirndls, nice people in dirndls, and they're partying. And I felt like a spectator at that party, because typically I don't travel with tour groups. I think that trip, we headed out to a couple castles in Bavaria, Neuschwanstein, and Hohenschwangau, and a city called Oberammergau. We went on a tour group to there because we needed to see those spots, and we weren't going to make it happen if we didn't. And that's fine, but in a tour group, you're with a bunch of people from where you come from, or at least native English speakers. When you're not with a tour group, you have to interact with the locals, and you build some communication skills. Sometimes you get treated like an asshole because you don't speak the language. Most often you do not. If you're just polite enough to greet somebody in the local language, they'll be nice to you. If you walk up to them and you speak English to them like you expect them to speak your language, you're going to offend them immediately. Do not do that if you're traveling abroad. But learn how to say hello. Yeah, that's how you say hello in German. You can also say Guten Tag, but saying hello with a German accent, hello, is also fine. Yeah. Native English speakers, Americans, we speak one language, and that's fine. You know, I once found myself at a table with a Swiss diplomat. That's a whole nother story altogether. He spoke 7 languages, and his wife spoke 5, and I felt like a piece of shit. And I thought, wait, well, he comes from Switzerland. They speak French, Swiss German, and Italian in Switzerland. And likewise, he doesn't have to travel that far, and he's in Spain. He doesn't have to travel that far, and he's in France. That's a little different from coming from Tenino, Washington. If you travel north, they speak English, and you got to go really fucking far south for them to speak Spanish. And back in those days, we didn't have a lot of migrant workers around, so there wasn't many Spanish speakers around. So we had French-speaking Quebec. I guess I'd go to the southeast of the United States over to Louisiana and find some more French. But anybody that wants to insult me because I only know one language, well, first off, ich habe sehr großes Schwanz. Und sie can go flicken sie self. I didn't say that right. You can go fuck yourself. I have some... I don't know if I really have language skills. I pretend to speak a little German. And I know pleasantries in Czech. I can say Dobrý den, Děkuji, prosím. And if I remember correctly, Dobrý den means hello. Děkuji means thank you. And prosím is how you say please. And it's also how you say you're welcome. Like the word bitte in German. So I digress. We're at this big-ass party called Oktoberfest. So here I am, this scrawny little nerd. I think I weighed $138 at the time. I was doing a lot of Muay Thai kickboxing. And that kept me lean, and I'm taking notes. And so we're at Oktoberfest, and I'm taking notes. With this early in the day. It's not too party-esque at that point. And drank some awesome beer. That Oktoberfest beer, it's like a... It's not the Märzen that a lot of Americans think it is. It's a Helles that's brewed a little stronger. And it's maybe even halfway between a Helles and a Märzen. It's aged for an appropriate amount of time. It's epically smooth, served in a liter. It's right around 5.8, 6%. So it'll get you drunk a little quicker, but not too quick. And you can get after it. It's beautiful. It'll make you have to pee, I'll tell you that. So we do that. We go back to the hotel. I think we probably took a nap, and then we come back later in the evening. And by this point, it's a drunk fest. People are singing. They're standing on tables. They're dancing. Well, I guess it was early in the evening first, before that happened. We were there for a bit. We're sitting at a table. I order a pretzel. Now, in most of Germany, the pretzels are about this big. Bavaria is the southernmost state of Germany. It's the largest state in Germany. And some people liken it to Texas of the United States. In Bavaria, a pretzel, if memory serves me, I don't think I'm exaggerating, I think a pretzel is this fucking big. It's a big-ass pretzel. It's girthy at its girthiest point. It's its narrow point. It's smaller. So I remember getting this big-ass pretzel. And you know I'm an American. I don't even remember if they put stuff on pretzels. I butter pretzels often these days because it's bread. Why wouldn't I put butter on it? I may have learned that in Europe, or I may not. I don't remember. But I remember saying to the lady, "Haben Sie Senf?" Senf is mustard, and they didn't. And the gentleman in lederhosen next to me, he giggles and he says, "Kein Senf, ketchup bitte." So that was bastardized speaking, and that meant no Senf, ketchup is better, and he is poking fun at me because he knew I was an American, and, well, some of us in America put ketchup on everything. But I ate this big-ass pretzel. It was dry, but that didn't matter because I had a fucking liter of beer. And I got right with the world that night, I'll tell you what. As the evening wound down, I bought a silly hat that I think I eventually gave to my mom. It was Holstein cattle print with some horns on it. A big point in the middle. It was not a traditional type hat. I think it's more the kind of hat they sell to tourists at Oktoberfest. But I remember seeing a fucking Moss. So a Moss is the 1 liter glass beer mug that's used in that part of town. And it was down on the ground. And it got kicked across the ground as everybody's leaving. And everybody's pretty tipsy. We were less tipsy, I think. And we go to the train station. Now, we've been in Munich for a while, and these are some nice folks. Most of the people in Munich were really good to us. And the more you get out in the rural areas, they're even sweeter. There's something to remember. Rural folks are nice folks, especially in the United States. Now, in the United States, they get a bad rap, and truth be told, they might say some horrible things about you because of your race or culture. But if you actually have to look them in the eye, they're going to be sweet to you. And I don't know if they're that same way in Europe. I think they're just sweet folks. They're just good old backcountry folks. Where are we going? Yeah, so we're at Oktoberfest, and these folks were at the train station, and the police are there. Now, back in those days, and this has changed, but back in those days, if you were at a brewfest in the United States, the police would be there. They'd be trying to arrest people for DUI as they left. These days in the United States, they'll actually be there breathalyzing you, convincing you not to drive. Back in those days, that's not how it went. And I'm glad things are improving. So we're in Germany, and I'm used to these police that are just wanting to arrest you for being a drunk. But instead, everybody's a drunk, especially at Oktoberfest, and they know that. So they're just trying to keep people safe. They don't want them to fight with each other, so they break up fights. Not that there were any, because Germans don't break rules, or rarely. They're trying to make sure they don't fall on the tracks and get run over by a train. And then the other thing I saw public displays of affection. These Germans are making out with one another as they're drunker than fuck. And, you don't see that often in the United States. It's not uncommon in Italy. By the way, ladies, I'm Italian. A quarter. But, yeah, all of a sudden these Germans are getting affectionate with one another. And we hopped our train, went home, and passed out. I have no shame. This 12-ounce Ramble, we're on beer number 4. So, there's probably a reason why I'm not going to do these every week. I don't get any good content, in my opinion. Yours might vary until I've had a few. I like to call this having a beer with Magnus. I should probably call it having a session with Magnus, I hope you like the way we got the studio decorated. We got this fucking oil lamp here burning. When the ladies are in the studio, they love the oil lamps. Now we're on to Olympia beer. Olympia beer? Oh, it says it's the water. Yeah, we've been there. Doesn't taste like much. It's yellow. Tastes like what in America we call yellow beer. Trademark is a horseshoe that says good luck. Good luck, Magnus. You're gonna need it with this life you've chosen, you son of a bitch. I'll tell you what, if you've got money, you make more than 60 70 grand a year if you're a King County dweller, or 50, 60 grand a year as a Thurston County dweller. Man, you need to go to Munich. That's a good city. You need to travel Germany. That's the spot to go. And if you're poor as an American, travel Eastern Europe. The most expensive thing's going to be your plane ticket. I mean, save your pennies and go. You'll be glad you did. That shit, it's good. Right now I got a buddy, he's over in Asia. I think he's in Malaysia. And culturally, that's night and day, which is more of a reason to go there. It's way different than our culture. They eat with goddamn little sticks. How do you eat tiny grains of rice with a stick? They figured that shit out. But that's also can be a very affordable place to travel. In the world, if something makes you feel uncomfortable, that probably means that's what you need to do the most. So go do that shit. Go travel. Meet people. Meet foreigners. Talk to them. Learn their culture and eat their food and drink their booze or whatever. It's going to make you a better person. You're going to have a more open mind. And, yeah. Well, hey, we're almost out of beer. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to smack that subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up. And, we'll talk to you soon.